We keep hearing there's a housing crisis in Tasmania and across the nation, but what's actually being done about it? Most experts say supply is the answer, but a new report has found Australia is building half as many homes per construction worker as in the 1970s. So why is Australia's construction productivity so weak? James Brooks is an economist at the Committee for Economic Development of Australia, more commonly known as CEDA. Thank you for joining me on the Drive program this afternoon.
Hello, Kylie. Thank you for having us.
So we need houses more than ever right now. So why, with the advancements in technology, are we so slow at building homes?
So absolutely right. As you highlighted, we found our construction workers are building about half as many homes per worker as they were in the 1970s. And we think there are many factors which are dragging down productivity in this sector. But a big one, which is not necessarily being talked about, is the proportion of very, very small businesses. So to give you an idea, 99% of Australian construction businesses have fewer than 20 employees. This is very different to other industries in Australia. And we think this has not necessarily been highlighted.
Do you think it's a case of these small businesses not actually being able to afford the tools, the technology needed to build homes at a faster pace?
That is absolutely at the crux of the problem. Small businesses in any industry often can't afford to adopt the latest and greatest technology, and that's why when we have a mix of other businesses, we get innovation and productivity improvements flowing through the industry. But unfortunately, construction hasn't seen that.
As an economist at CEDA, do you think that federal government, incentives to see a growth in prefab homes, for example, might help sort of speed up the entire construction process and deliver better outcomes for Australia and obviously particularly for Tasmania?
So absolutely. What the government's doing on prefab is the right direction. Prefab has a role in helping us build more homes. But what we're calling for is a more streamlined approach to how we construct and develop. Right now, Australia has a really complex and decentralised planning and zoning regulations, some of the most decentralised in the OECD. And we think this makes it more difficult to build products like prefab in lots of different places.
Do you think that the number of councils in Tasmania and red tape more broadly is choking us a little bit? I know our state government here has been, putting a lot of stuff on Facebook and advertising. They're really keen to cut back on red tape. But do you think this sort of thing is choking, the state a little bit?
Look, I wouldn't want to comment on the specific number of councils in Tasmania. It might be the right number, but whether all these different councils are doing new things, different processes, so it's completely different constructing in one and the other, that is the type of thing which makes it harder to build and construct, and that's what we're seeing over time.
My guest is James Brooks, an economist at the Committee for Economic Development of Australia. You're listening to 936 ABC Radio Hobart. I'm Kylie Baxter. Now, James, I want to know what kind of pressure this weak productivity puts on house prices.
So a lot of pressure. Over time, it's taking more workers to build new homes. This means the industry cannot meet our growing demand for housing. The measures we're calling for in the report would help us fix productivity and help us build more homes.
I'm curious to know what you think about this comment from Sarah, who's listening to the conversation. Sarah says, Kylie, let's be honest, it is a male-dominated industry. If you want to get something done fast and get it done right, get some women in there. What do you think about that, James?
I think Sarah's absolutely bang on the money there. And if I had an extra 1,000 words, I probably would have written that in the report.
Hey, what can we do to improve construction productivity, in your opinion?
So what we're calling for is a look at our tax settings. Right now we tax workers and contractors very differently, and this provides an incentive for really good, competent workers to start their own small businesses and then stay small. We also need to look at, as I mentioned, our complex and decentralised planning regulations. We think this is contributing to keeping firms smaller. There's also a preference within the industry for outsourcing and contracting by bigger firms. So we think there's some things we can do to change that.
Does it frustrate you that Australia needs more housing, yet, whether the regulations or whatever the reason, the lack of productivity is just not happening?
It is frustrating. Of course, it's frustrating, but it's a complex issue and we're learning more and more about it every day. And I think governments are listening to what we're saying. It's just about finding agreement and finding how we can get those policies through.
Quite a few people are texting in. This one is Carol. Hello, Carol in Margate. Nice to hear from you. She says, Kylie, surely one of the factors is the sheer size of houses these days compared with decades ago. They cover the whole block now, the houses, says Carol. It is true. There are some massive houses being built. Do you think that could be slowing down productivity?
So that is true. We do have some of the largest houses in the world. I think we're tied in with the United States. And there is a very complicated set of regulations and incentives, which means when we do build houses, we build really big ones so that they're really expensive and people like that. That is a whole separate area which we could look at changing planning regulations and the attitudes of home buyers in Australia.
Phil wants to comment on the new report revealing Australia is building half as many homes per construction worker as in the 70s and the weak productivity. He asks, is it possibly because of all the OH&S regulations?
So we didn't look specifically at OH&S regulations, so I wouldn't want to compare what it was like in the 70s to now, where our evidence suggested to us that it's more around this growth and reliance on small businesses, which has been limiting productivity in the sector.
Very interesting conversation. James, one will continue again in the future, but thank you for coming on the Drive program.
Thank you. Look forward to it, Kylie.
James Brooks there, economist at the Committee for Economic Development in Australia.